Washington National Cathedral, the 12th largest cathedral in the world, has been celebrated by every U.S. president since construction began in 1907. The iconic rose window was designed by Rowan LeCompte, whose first window for the cathedral was created when he was 16. At 84, while still working on yet another window, Rowan was the focus of Peter Swanson's award-winning film, Let There Be Light, which is about the cathedral and about those who physically created the stained glass windows, including master craftsman Goldkuhle, who spent 2 years installing the rose window, and master craftsman Mary Clerkin Higgins, who had a long and fruitful working relationship with Rowan. Net traveled to Washington, D.C. to speak to filmmaker Peter Swanson and to learn more about what happened after an earthquake in 2011 caused millions of dollars worth of damage to the structure and delayed installation of Rowan LeCompte's final window.
But you can see the construction deck. They put this deck over the ceiling here, and that's where we're working up there. And you know that you have to have hard hats and safety goggles and things like that. And this is you can see the scale of the windows here. It's just amazing, the scale of the windows. They're just massive. Well, when I was in high school, my mom worked at the cathedral here, and one of my summer jobs was carrying around the mail. And at that time, I was interested in film, and there was a woman named Marjorie Hunt who made a film about the stone carvers, and that won the Oscar that year for Best Short Documentary, and kind of was inspiring to see that. I went to college and studied film and was working in the industry for a while, and then started my own business. But I always wanted to do something about the stained glass here, because it's especially beautiful stained glass, and especially Rowan's work is really magnificent. And then I heard that Rowan was actually going to make one more window. And I just couldn't let him work without shooting it, without documenting it. So I found somebody who gave me an introduction to him, and I went down and talked with him and met him, and we seemed to hit it off. And so he invited me down to a studio to start the project. Big crowd. So we're going to walk down through the gift shop, through the chapel, St. Vincent's Chapel. This is St. Dunstan's Chapel, and this is the first window that Rowan did at the age of 16. Wow. And even still, it had to go before the design had to go before the building committee, the art committee again, and it was accepted, so that was good. So it took 100 years to build the cathedral, and so there's a history of stained glass within the building. And these are some of the earlier windows that were made, and you can tell this is a much different style than Rowan's windows. These are a much more traditional style of stained glass, done by the early, in the style of the early masters.
Very much more formal.
Yeah, much more formal. Where Rowan's are much more looser and freer and different style. Yeah, we want to go up here.
We do?
Okay. So this is Rowan's West Rose window, and it's it's an icon of the cathedral. They use it in all their advertising and marketing campaigns. It's just a magnificent window. It just sparkles, and one of the reasons it sparkles is, see, it's got a big overhang from it. If it was a normal window, the light would just get stuck in that overhang.
Right.
But Rowan and Dieter developed a system where they used inch-thick glass and cut little facets in it, and so it scatters the light, and it's just marvelous how the light. And on a sunny day, you'll see just the twinkling that window.
So that's part of the construction they created themselves.
Yeah. Rowan was just kind of puzzling over how is he going to do this. It's going to be, and they came up with this idea of faceted glass.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because today is a super cloudy day outside. You can hardly get any light, and yet it's
still glowing. And look at these other windows; they're just like flat.
The essential experience that launched the window was in September, October. Peggy and I went out to look at leaves, and we were living in Reston, and the leaves were so beautiful. That was a year where there had been enough rain and everything was just glorious. And it was those trees that put me onto this. I just thought how beautiful they are. Some in shadow, and some in full sunshine, and some mysterious and dim, and others just like trumpets. And trying to make a design that said that. And I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and this is it.
The rose window is certainly special in my career, and it only happens once in 1,000 lifetimes to have a chance to be working on a rose window of that dimension.
I was free of having to preach, and there were no lessons to be learned by studying this thing. But I wanted it to be complicated so that people would want to study it.
But then when you really look at it, it is full of motifs, of Celtic interlacing patterns. The west rose window from the floor is seen against a 15-foot overhang, which casts a shadow on that glass. And Rowan's idea was to overcome that shadow by a faceted glass that gathers light and scatters it and completely ignores this shadow.
If you look up at the clear story, this is Abraham, and the story of Abraham and Isaac. But what I wanted to mention is that when Rowan's designing this window, because you're looking at it from such a steep angle, he has to elongate all the body proportions. So they're all foreshortened. I mean, so that they look at a proper proportion from this angle on the floor. It would be a whole different thing if they were lower and you're looking at them straight on, but because you're looking at them from such an angle, he adjusts the body proportions so they seem more normal.
That's incredible that he has to think that out, and actually he has thought of that.
That's right, absolutely. And the other thing he's thought out is, this is the south side of the building, so this glass treats light differently than the glass on the north side of the building. It doesn't get as much light, so these windows are all lighter over here because they get less sunlight. The other thing he says is that you have to understand how to balance the glass, because on cloudy days, some blues come out better. On sunny days, some of the yellows shine. So you have to understand that there's going to be weather happening. Right. It's a dynamic environment. And so you have to balance the amount of color in the glass so it doesn't get overpowered by one color or another.
Well, yeah. And how big are those panels each? Because there are 4 panels in each window, right? Yeah, there are 4 panels in each window, and each panel is called a lancet. So there are 4 lancets. And they're each about 20, 25 feet high in the center. Wow. And how high is the cathedral right here?
Oh, I think that's about 100 feet off the floor.
100 feet off the floor.
Right. And so the window that I followed Rowan make, it's going to be in that kind of a space. And so there's about 40 panels in the window. And he's only painting one panel at a time. Right. But he's thinking about
not only one panel, one piece of glass.
One piece of glass. But he has to match the color in the hands from the panel from below to the color of the feet. It's got to all work together.
And also he's got to think about all the other panels in the building below it, above it,
and he's thinking about the panels that are the neighbors of these 2 windows. Right. So the new window is made to fit in between those 2 windows, and it's just to blend the whole. Rowan looks at this whole clear story as one piece of art. Yeah, I'm sure of it.
It's so unreasonable to have any comment on a piece of work that you're looking at from photographs taken a few feet away, and you're looking at them close up. And the work itself that people are going to see when it's in its place will be over and away from more than 100 feet.
This window is replacing a window he did many years ago that was deemed to be too dark. It was an experiment in controlling the light. They were trying to make the church darker at that end because the choir was a really dark space. And they thought if they could make the nave darker, the choir wouldn't seem so black. So that first window was really dark, and it was too dark. And once they started putting the other windows beside it, it was clear that that window was dark. So they decided to keep going with the other windows, and at some point they would try and get a grant or a donation, and they did. They got a donation to make this new window, and Rowan started that about 2006. He started that window. And when I first was in the studio, he was working on the cartoon for the window. And a cartoon is a full-size drawing of the design. They called it cartoons a long time ago, but it's a full-size pencil drawing of the design that he does on the wall in the studio.
Okay, and he doesn't actually put the glass in or work on the construction of that. Who does that? Tell us about that.
He used to do that, but as he was getting older, it was hard to do it. But he's always often had a partner who does the fabrication, who will choose the glass, cut the glass, and do the leading. And that's based on his design and his. When he does the cartoon, he'll put green, just letters, green, blue for each of the spaces. And then Dieter Goldkuhle, who is a master craftsman from Germany, he'll take those kind of clues that Rowan's given him, and he'll select the glass. And they've been doing this together on and off for years, so they kind of have a shorthand. They know what they're talking about most of the time. Dieter can kind of get inside Rowan's head most of the time. So Dieter will select the glass, cut the glass, and then Rowan will come in and inspect Dieter's choices. And every now and then there'll be a piece of glass that Rowan's not quite happy with because it's the first time he's seen his design in glass. And he'll have Dieter change out a piece of glass. And when he does that, you can see Dieter cringe a little bit because he cuts it with such loving care and selects it. It's like you're cutting out a piece of his heart when Rowan changes a piece of glass. But as the artist, Rowan just needs to adjust the shading of the window. The glass is just the base layer of the window. Then the design, the texture is painted on with a glass paint. It's glass powder, and it controls the light. It adds detail, and it's basically a black paint in this case. And he does it all thousands of pieces of glass. They just paints all kinds of little details. If you look close up, there's these tiny little interesting squiggles and lines and designs that he makes that nobody will ever see from the floor. But they add texture and they add sparkle in the design. So after he paints it, then that paint has to be baked on the glass. So Dieter again will take the painted glass back to his studio, put it in a kiln, and then he'll bake on the paint, and that will kind of fuse the paint and the glass so they become one. Then Dieter will take those pieces of glass and put them in lead. And Dieter actually made his own lead. And he'll follow the design, the cartoon design, and put all the pieces in lead, and so everything becomes locked in lead. And once that's done, then that's clean, and then the panels are ready to basically go into the cathedral. So once Rowan had finished the design and finished the panels, before they were put in the cathedral, there was a review by the Cathedral Fine Arts Committee. And after the initial review, the committee rejected the window. Now this is 4 years after the window had started. It took four years to make the window. It's a massive window, over 25 feet high. So the committee decided they didn't like the design, but they made a decision based on a photograph of the window that was done against a light box. There are about 40 panels. Each one's about 3 feet by 2 feet. So they hired a photographer. He took individual photographs of each of the panels, and then photoshopped them all together and made maybe a 6-foot-high poster that the committee looked at to make their judgment. That's a whole different thing than seeing the window up in the clear story of the cathedral against natural light. That's the way it was designed to be seen. And in fact, Rowan's contract said no decision should be made about the window until it's in place in the cathedral. So Rowan was pretty upset about that and filed an appeal. One of the people who helped with the appeal is Mary Clerkin Higgins. Mary took over for Dieter on the window because Dieter had actually a contract. The window was about 3 years behind schedule. Dieter had to go and do other work. He just had contracts for other work. So Rowan invited Mary Higgins to come in, and she's also a master of glass. And so she helped finish the leading of the final lancet of the window and helped paint part of the rose of the window.
Well, Rowan was one of the first people that I met while I was working at that studio. He was, we did several windows for him at the cathedral, and he and I really hit it off. He was very funny, very intelligent. You could have a wonderful conversation with him about just about anything.
Wow! Wow! Oh, Mary, you've had such a good time.
I have.
I am very, 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 very pleased.
Well, the last window that Rowan made for the cathedral was a replacement Isaiah window for a window that he had already made in 1980, but it was a very dark window, and he had always wanted to replace it with a lighter window. So he was given the opportunity and made the window. It took much longer than they expected. He thought he'd have it done in 2 years. It took about 6 years to finish. He started working with one person, Dieter Goldkuhle, to make it, and then Dieter had things he had to do, so then I came in and finished the window and the rose for Rowan, and then photographed it while it was in my studio and brought it down to the cathedral for installation. The cathedral, however, for a variety of reasons, was concerned about the window and decided to photograph it and on a light box and decide whether or not they would install it. After doing that, they put it together in a montage and decided no, it would not be installed. However, when I saw their photographs, I saw that their photographs were nothing like what the window looked like when it left my studio. So I wrote a report comparing my photographs with their photographs and with my understanding of stained glass and how it changes, especially when you see it from a great distance and an angle such as you do in a clerestory window. You see it from about 120 feet away. One issue was that the angel was holding a coal up to Isaiah, and the coal should be a glowing ember. And that was the lancet that we had actually put together here at the studio. And the ember is a beautiful yellow surrounded by orange reds. It really is a gorgeous, gorgeous glowing ember, and it really works well. But again, in the committee's photographs, it's pink somehow. And it's pink, it's dull, and it blends in completely with the glass around it. It's all the same color. And I cannot understand how that could have happened, but it is in no way an accurate representation of what is going on in the window. So I was able to put that together in a report for the committee and to try to better explain to them what they were looking at.
The administration said, okay, we'll take a look at it with some fresh eyes. And they got another committee with some nonpartisan people involved, took a second look at the window against some natural light, not up in the cathedral, but they put it against some real clear windows, and they could see it behind natural light. And from that, they decided to install 2 of the outer lancets. There are 4 lancets in the window, and they agreed that they really needed to replace those dark lancets, and these outside lancets, they liked the design on those, and so they decided to install. They were going to do that back in 2011. Just as they were getting ready to install those 2 outer lancets, there was an earthquake in Virginia that shook the cathedral pretty hard, did a lot of damage, about $26 million worth of damage to the cathedral. And so everything got put on hold. The cathedral had some real issues to deal with structural damage from the earthquake. They raised a lot of money to fix it. But they did say that at some point they'll have scaffolding up there where that window needs to be installed. And when they do, they'll find a time to bring Mary Higgins in and install the window.
And I just found out this morning that they have reevaluated and they've decided to put in all 4 lancets. So yes, we are thrilled.
Congratulations, yeah.
It's really, I think it's a great decision. I know that Rowan would be really happy, and I am just very happy to be a part of it all. So,
how did he deal with having his window rejected after so much work, so much design, you know, years of work, and then they're told that they don't want to put it in? How did he handle that and continue to keep going forward?
Well, he was pretty frustrated with it. I went down and interviewed him after that, and he was very, very frustrated, especially because the committee made the decision not based on seeing the window in its under real light. But he also recognizes that, you know, churches and committees go hand in hand, and there are a lot of complexities in an institution like a cathedral that the administration has to deal with. He had a smile on his face when he thought, you know, something will change, something will happen, we'll do an appeal. He just kept in stride and kept moving forward.
What other kind of work has he done outside of the cathedral?
He's done a lot of work for smaller churches around the country. I don't know exactly where they are, but he's got a lot of windows. He's from Baltimore. He's got some windows in Baltimore. There's a window in a museum in North Carolina. He's done a lot of windows in Wilmington, North Carolina. He's done a lot of work down there. But he spent a lot of his life working on windows for the cathedral. And
tell us a little bit more about Dieter's background and where he is today.
Dieter Goldkuhle was a master German craftsman. He went to the Rhinebeck School of Glass in Germany and studied there, and he comes from a family of craftsmen, of glass craftsmen, and that region in Germany is famous for its glass. But he wanted to come to America and leave this kind of glass structure system that was in Germany where you work for one studio all your life. He wanted to kind of get away from that. So he came to America and got an introduction actually to Rowan from a mutual friend, and within 2 weeks of landing in America he had a job working on in New York doing glass. So and he just Dieter loves light and glass, the mixture of those two mediums. He's a philosopher, and he's just in love with it, the medium. He knows how they blow the glass. It's all hand-blown glass, and these big factories and guys work 3 shifts around the clock and blow these huge plates of glass. It's a lot of heavy, hot work. We went to the Lambert's Glass Works in Waldshausen, Germany, and it's just an amazing place. Big furnaces, and there are about 5 teams of guys, and each team has about 4 different guys on it. You have the master glass blower and his apprentice, and they blow these big long tubes of glass about this big, and then they'll cut off the ends, so you've got cylinders, and then they'll score that cylinder, and then they'll put it in the oven, and the glass will flatten out, and you've got a flat sheet of glass, and it's just amazing work. I knew that I liked stained glass, but I didn't know anything about how they made it or how much work it is. It's a lot of work to make a window. It's a lot of work to install a window. And I think for me, that's one of the things about this film is it shows art doesn't just happen. Art is it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hot, heavy work. It's a lot of hard work. And you have to be really committed to it. And both Rowan and Dieter had a passion for their work. And I think that's what makes them interesting characters in this film.
How has making the film changed you?
Well, it's been a great pleasure and to work with Rowan and Dieter and Mary. I mean, it's been really terrific to be able to spend time with them. I'm honored by that. As a filmmaker, getting a chance to really practice the craft on something that's really wonderful. I get so tired of films that glorify destruction and blowing things up. And for me, this is a chance to celebrate creation. And there is drama in creation. And this film shows that there is drama in creation. And I think that's much more interesting to celebrate and to focus on as a filmmaker, is creating things rather than just destroying things and blowing things up.
It's presumptuous to try to say, this shows. Oh, no, it doesn't. This is a meditation, you might say, just one person's meditation on the complexity of the universe. I dare not say more than just it's an unknowing whisper in the dark but it's happy.